Have you ever wondered where the whole idea of checks and balances in a government comes from? You know, the system that's supposed to stop any one person from becoming too powerful? Well, what if I told you it was dreamed up by an 18th century French nobleman? Today, we're diving into the brilliant mind of Montesquieu and his game-changing idea, the separation of powers.
So, to really get what Montesquieu was up to, you have to picture his world. We're talking 18th century France. This was the era of absolute monarchy, where literally all the power, making laws, enforcing them, fighting wars, it was all in the hands of one guy, the king. His word wasn't just important, it was the law.
And when you put that much power in one place, it begs a huge, timeless question. A question that thinkers back then were wrestling with, and frankly, we still are today. If one person holds all the cards, how in the world do you stop them from abusing that power? That's the puzzle we're going to try and solve.
To figure out the solution, we've got to start with the problem. So let's take a closer look at the system Montesquieu grew up in, France's age of absolutism.
Okay, so under King Louis XIV, they called him the Sun King. This system was an absolute machine. He controlled every single important council that made decisions. He went out of his way to weaken any local parliaments that might challenge him. And the nobility, the other powerful people in the country, he basically neutered them. He took away their real power and kept them busy and distracted with this over-the-top fancy court life at Versailles. It was a total masterclass in grabbing and holding on to absolute control.
But here's the thing about systems like that. Even when they're designed to squash any and all criticism, brilliant minds find a way. And in that time, that mind belonged to Charles de Montesquieu, a man whose sharp pen was about to challenge the very idea of absolute rule.
Now, Montesquieu wasn't some wild-eyed revolutionary. He was a nobleman, a judge, a really careful observer. And the big turning point for him was his trip across Europe. He went to England, and there he saw something that just blew his mind, a monarchy where the king's power was limited, where it was shared. That experience planted the seed for what would become his life's greatest work, the spirit of the laws.
And his critiques were just so witty and sharp. In an early book, The Persian Letters, he used this clever trick. He wrote from the perspective of two Persian travelers looking at French society. And check out this quote. He's saying the king's real magic isn't his army, it's his ability to control what people think. I mean, that is just a devastatingly smart critique of absolute power.
So all this observing and critiquing led him to write his masterpiece, The Spirit of the Laws. And this wasn't just another complaint about the king. No, this was way more ambitious. He was trying to create a real science of politics, to figure out the fundamental rules that make a government work, or more importantly, what makes it fail.
So in the book, he basically sorts all governments into three buckets. First, you've got a republic, which needs its people to be virtuous to survive. Then there's a monarchy, which he actually thought could be pretty good as long as it's governed by laws and a sense of honor. And then there's despotism, one person ruling with no rules, no laws, just pure whim. And what holds that together? Fear. For Montesquieu, that was the ultimate political evil. That was the danger he saw brewing in France.
Okay, so if despotism, this rule by fear, is the thing to avoid at all costs, how do you stop it? This question brings us right to the heart of his entire philosophy, an idea he called power versus power. Before he could build a better system, he had to define what he was aiming for: political liberty. And for him, liberty wasn't, just doing whatever you feel like. That's anarchy. No, for Montesquieu, real liberty is the peace of mind you get from knowing you're safe. It's the freedom to do anything the law allows because you know those same laws stop others from harming you. It's a really deep idea. It's freedom through the law, not freedom from the law. So, to get that liberty, he broke government down into its three basic jobs, or what he called powers. First, the legislative power. That's the part that makes the laws. Second, the executive. That's the part that enforces the laws. And third, the judicial power, which interprets the laws and settles arguments. Sound familiar? Yeah, it probably should. And here it is, the big one. Montesquieu basically says, look, history and human nature tell us the same thing. Give someone power and they're probably going to abuse it. It's just what people do. So the solution isn't to hope you find a really nice virtuous leader. The solution is to build a system where, as he puts it so perfectly, power must be checked with power.
And this is his elegant solution. It's so clear. On one side, you have tyranny. That's what happens when you combine the power to make laws, enforce laws, and judge laws all in the same hands. But on the other side, you have liberty. And the only way to get it is to pull those powers apart. You have to keep them separate so they can check and balance each other.
And the amazing thing is, this wasn't just some abstract theory for a book.
Montesquieu's idea became a practical, hands-on guide for a brand new country that was desperate to avoid the very tyranny its founders had run away from. His work became, in effect, a blueprint for America.
Yeah, I mean, his ideas were talked about all over Europe, for sure, but nowhere did they take root and actually get put into practice like they did in the new American Republic. The people who wrote the U.S. Constitution, they weren't just casually aware of his work. They were his biggest fans, his most dedicated